Welcome to the podcast Selling Real Estate with Kelly Cook, where we will discuss the latest and most relevant business strategies to help you do one thing extremely well: sell more homes. We'll discuss everything from business planning to lead generation and conversion to past client customer service and everything in between. Join us for authentic conversations and nuts and bolts takeaways you can implement into your business today. And now, Selling Real Estate with Kelly Cook.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Selling Real Estate with Kelly Cook. And we have Kelly Cook with us today. We're so fortunate because he was a little busy earlier. Kelly, you were at an event. And real quick, before we dive into what we're going to talk about today, give us one takeaway from you were at the Built How event. It's in your home city of Phoenix, is where it's being held. So you didn't have to do any traveling. You can go to a little bit of event, get back to work. From today, if you could share just like one takeaway or one cool thing that you learned or somebody you met or something you heard, what was that today?
Yeah, I'm going to go tactical here because this may not be earth shattering, but I'm going to go tactical here because I'm big on that. I'm going to give two things. Okay. And Built How, by the way, is a phenomenal job. I mean, Ben and Chris Suarez, Ben Kinney, Brian Gubnick, they do a great job. And I love it because it's non-real estate brokerage. It's real estate brokerage agnostic, if you will. Yes, exactly. Doesn't matter what brokerage you're with. We're all in this boat together trying to figure out how to best serve our clients and things of that nature, right? And of course, increase our business and make it more efficient and all that fun stuff. So that's all good. So I'm going to give two things real quick because they were good. Number one, tactical, meaningful. In your database, which everyone, first of all, you should have a database, a CRM, right? But in your CRM, you should have a status, a tag, a label called archive. These are the people that have gone cold. They haven't told you got lost or to get lost, but they've gone cold. You fell out of touch with them for whatever the reason, but they're still there because they haven't said, don't ever call me again. So what do you do with those people? So they should be in a pond where everyone on the team, if you have a team, can go fishing. That way everyone has opportunity to maybe get a hold of these people, to serve them, to help them with any real estate needs they still may have. Because a lot of times they just maybe weren't quite ready to transact when the agent was actually speaking with them at that previous time. Now, the thing though about that is every single person should be on some sort of house search. Okay. So if you're in that archive label, and they're in a database, that does not mean they're dead or bad or not good or whatever their connotation you want to give them. That just means they maybe aren't ready yet. So every one of those people should have a housing search going for them, and it should be automated. And it should be, if anything, because you don't know anything about them, it should be the average price of the area that their town is in, or that they were looking at the open house when you met them, or whatever it was, just so they can get that information. Because I don't know about you, Elizabeth, but a lot of people will sit back there behind the curtain and they'll look and they'll look and they'll look, but they aren't quite ready yet. So they don't want to talk to anyone yet, but they're looking. Mm-hmm. And so give them what they potentially are looking for. Mm-hmm. What a concept. So that's how you best serve them in that situation, because they don't want to talk to you yet. So just give them what they want, be a resource when they're ready. And there could be a big thing there. The second thing is, it was a health aspect of the event. And this gal got up there who's the CEO of Kaleidoscope. They're juices, natural, fresh juices that are healthy. And she said that the one takeaway is, don't just drink water. Okay, water is almost the remedy to the root of a lot of problems if you have a lack of it and you're constantly dehydrated, right? So you should constantly be drinking water, but don't just drink water and don't just over drink water. Make it work for you. So what she said is the most purest, best way to drink water is to have some sort of Celtic or Himalayan salt in its purest form. And yes, you carry it around in your purse or your bag, whatever, and you just drop a little bit of that in your hydro flask right here, or whatever it may be, and it's now mixed because that has potassium and sodium in the right amount and they're all working together. Yep. Correct. Because your body needs more than just the water. albeit water by itself is still really, really good. So that was kind of interesting, right? And by the way, she said watermelon and pineapple, the two best fruits to constantly eat, because even though they have natural sugar to them, that sugar is not bad. Your body needs it. And they're extremely
super
water
hydrating.
based.
Yeah.
Yep. So it hydrates you. So interesting, right?
Yeah. But and watermelon, I mean, I love watermelon, but like, cause you're getting hydrated. They're not a lot of calories if that's something you're worried about. Right. But takes, you could eat like a whole watermelon and you get that, that satisfaction of eating, right? Just the act of eating, you get that without all the bad stuff that comes with it. So awesome. Well, very cool, Kelly. I didn't know we were going to get a health lesson on this, but
right.
Hey,
you never
everything
know.
plays into your success, right? Your health
It's
is a huge part of that. Exactly. So fantastic. Well, the Built How event, like he said, is going on in Phoenix. They do it every year. So if you hadn't heard about it, go look it up and maybe get on the train for next year. But today we are going to talk about Kelly brought up a story today that he's going to share with us, and it kind of got our brains turning about, how can we take this story, this lesson, and turn it into a message for you guys, right? Something that is really important. And that is, having your client's best interest at heart, right? Or like acting in your client's best interest. And I know that sounds like duh, right? Like, of course, that's the part of what you, it's almost like a doctor takes that oath of do no harm, right? Save the patient, all of that. That's almost like what a real estate agent is doing. Net my client the best amount of money, do what is right for them, right? You're taking kind of that oath when you become a real estate agent. But we wanted to dive into why that's important and how that can kind of sometimes conflict, or it feels like it can conflict with what's at your best interest, right? And why that's, those can be sometimes blurry lines, but that's what we want to talk about today. So let's get into it, Kelly.
Yeah, this is a big topic. It's one that's more general, but guys, I'm telling you, it's at the heart of the fiduciary concept that an agent is to be for the clients they serve. So there are a lot of different things that come with that. Again, it's a duh concept. It's not like anything earth shattering, but what do we mean by that? There's a lot of different ways you can protect your client's best interest. But the number one primary way you do that is by putting your interest last. Everything else, all the little things that come with it, go in front of your interest, from making sure they see all homes, no matter what potentially a seller is offering in terms of compensation, to protecting their earnest deposit, their good faith money when they're under contract, to make sure that no matter what, that is not ever in jeopardy, to making sure they have what they need when they need it, the entire escrow process, to make sure they understand what they're signing with all, not just the purchase contract, but all of the different intricacies that go with it, to ensure they know what's at stake or what's not. All these things matter. But if you put their interest first and your interest second, they naturally just will. Then it becomes a matter of just education, right? As long as your heart is correct. And guys, most agents are, let's be clear about that. But there are some people you probably question from time to time. And maybe their heart is even somewhat right, but because they are maybe out of money, they've fallen off tough times, they need some sort of income to, provide for themselves or the family. It's funny, or not funny, but it's interesting what happens when that is the case, because then all of a sudden people's judgments, the lines get a little blurry. Mm-hmm. It can happen, guys.
I would say that it's hard. It's against our kind of human nature, right? Like, I mean, go back to how evolving and all that stuff. Yeah. Like, it is our self-preservation is like the most intrinsic thing that we have as humans, right? Like, so it is hard to change that mindset. And, although it's not a life or death situation, right? But it is hard to kind of train yourself out of that mindset of putting somebody else first and yourself in the back seat, right?
That's right. And a lot of us get into real estate because we want this big opportunity, this ceiling that does not exist, to go out there and reap what you sow, right? That sort of thing, and all the rewards that come with it. But what a lot of people don't do is they don't plan accordingly for the first 3, 6, 9 months, in which it could be really thin. So sometimes naturally, because of self-preservation, peoples can make bad decisions. And so, as a client, if they're looking to interview an agent, that could be something you really want to consider and somehow get out of them. Like how long you've been in the business, what did you do before you got in the business, and how long did you do it for? And then you can start formulating an opinion as to, is this person going to have, would there be any conflict of interest at all that potentially could come in the way when they're helping me? Arguably, it's one of my largest purchases of my entire life as a client, that sort of thing, right? And then of course, the motivation piece. Are you the single breadwinner of your family? Is it just you? Do you have kids to support? Whatever it may be, right? All those things kind of matter. That can give you a little insight in terms of motivation. But going back to the client's best interest, you really want to ensure that's number one. Not just because you sign a document and you make an oath like you will to do that when you are a licensee, but because it's just flat out the right thing to do. You get by giving in this world. And, I have to always check myself too, because naturally I'm just not, self-admittedly, I'm just not a naturally big giver. I'm just not. And I think a lot of it has to do with probably how I grew up. Like we all are affected by, how we grew up. But if you didn't have a lot, you kind of had the scarcity mentality. Well, I had to learn over the years, I'm still learning on having an abundant mindset. An abundant mindset, not just with my stuff that I potentially have my arms around, or, when it comes to money or possessions, that sort of thing, but abundant mindset in terms of what I can give, in terms of what my knowledge I've obtained in 18 years of doing this, selling, over 2,000 homes in my career and things of that nature with respect to this industry. Coaching youth, because I have a passion of having a positive impact on young men's lives, and I do it through the game of football because I know it really well and I enjoy it, that sort of thing. So that's what we really want to really, hammer home here today, is that such a big deal. It really is. And so that's what you should do, is have a servant's heart coming into the industry. And then even though it gets tough and people sometimes are a pain in the, it still is them first, and you're going to have a lot more good ones than you do bad ones.
And I would even say it to that, sometimes just, it's okay sometimes if there is really a true tear in the relationship between you and your client. Sometimes it is acting in both your and their best interest if you hey, I think you should go work with somebody else, I don't think we're a fit anymore. And if you're getting to that point where you feel like you truly cannot act in their best interest because of the relationship being severed, the best thing to do is to allow them, maybe introduce them to somebody else, allow them to work with somebody else as well. So, I mean, of course, as much as you can, put their needs first and all of that. But if it ever does get to that point, it is also okay and acting in their best interest to have them work with somebody else. I mean,
Yeah,
am I right there?
exactly. And I've done that a handful of times in my career. And boy, every time I made a decision, it was like this weight lifted off me. And now I could go out and be a better version of myself for other people. So definitely something to consider for sure. But let me give an example. So I'm talking to a friend of mine, and he had a relationship with an agent prior to meeting me, but nonetheless, we became good friends, and we're talking, and great guy. And he basically, make a long story really short, he was renting a place, even though he owned a house, and he wanted to sell the house. Well, the current landlord of the place he's renting said, hey, if you use me, this kind of thing, right, in this house I sell, then, I'll give you a good deal and I'll make it easy for you to transition to, some other new house, blah, 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 blah. If you want to cut the lease short, you can, I'll be flexible with you, all this stuff, right? And so he does, he goes with that. He uses this agent and they get this house sold eventually. And there were some issues there, but that's not the point of this story. Point is, now it's time to buy a house. And so he uses the agent that he had this long-standing relationship with. He comes into play. And so he uses him to purchase a house. Well, they get under contract with the house because, of course, the previous agent, who's a landlord as well, right, already got his deal over here from his previous house my friend owned. And he goes, cool. Hey, so-and-so agent, we're under contract now on a new house. And like we talked about, if I gave you the listing of mine and you did a good job, all stuff, then you said you'd be flexible with me on this lease that I have with your house that you own currently. And he goes, no, not going to do it. So there's two parts of the story. He goes, not going to do it. Why? Because you didn't use me to help you purchase it. He goes, yeah, but I used you to sell. And that's what was agreed upon, and we have this relationship where we're very open and we're talking, and you're the landlord, I'm the tenant, and nope, sorry, that's not the deal. So now he's looking to hold his foot to the fire on performing on the remainder of the lease. Meanwhile, the house now has a domino effect, because the house now he's under contract with, he has to cancel. Okay. Well, so that's number one. That's like really like not okay, right? Not ethical. Can the guy, is he breaking laws and stuff? I guess not, but just good karma and being unethical is clearly what's happening there. So that really stinks, number one. Number two, then he goes on to say that when he went to cancel, the advice he was given was to cancel because, of course, he can't get out of his lease, right? Well, according to the contract in the state of Arizona, that's a little bit of a gray area, because technically you're supposed to cancel within that time period of due diligence for a property specific reason. So canceling because of a domino effect situation is not necessarily a property specific reason with respect to the house you're buying. So now this seller has an issue, and there's a good size chunk of earnest money on the line now that now is having to be interpleaded between buyer and seller to see who actually gets it, because it's one person says this, the other person says that. It's a little bit of gray area, and here we go. Whereas if maybe he would have just said anything about the property, there's a million things about any house you could say,
Yeah.
no problem. It's
Doors
literally
creak too much. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So then there's issues with cure periods and notices with the contract they have to be up to speed with as an agent. So here's the thing. I don't know that the second agent did anything wrong in terms of, I'm sure the second agent had everything in terms of his best interest in heart for this friend of mine. But again, maybe the advice for whatever reason, whether it's just he just didn't know or whatever, could have been a little bit better, right? And then of course on the first side of this, that's just bad all the way around.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting. You really want to
and a note to, if you make agreements, put it in writing.
Put it in writing. Absolutely. And you really want to just surround yourself with good people, right? And maybe, and my friend thought they were good. This one guy was a good person and he wasn't. The other guy is still a great person, but he just didn't know maybe the intricacies of the contract when it came to that, because there's a lot of them. But again, all that stuff matters. So my point to this story, Elizabeth, is that don't be like the first guy, clearly, right? Have the best interest of your client, right? Because he was that guy's client for the other transaction. So just have your best interests and do the right thing just as a human, number one, and a professional. And then number two, just really make sure you know all of your state contracts and addendums so you can truthfully advise your client as best as possible. And if you're aren't sure, there's always someone you can ask, right? Whether it's your designated broker, your state broker, maybe somebody that you coach with, anybody that has a lot of experience and wisdom that are in your marketplace, you can always reach out to. And most people are really cool about that, and they'll help out, even though there may be nothing in it for them. So that is the point, guys, is to make sure you do that. Because that segues into the other thing real quick I want to talk about, which is some states in America are attorney states when it comes to real estate, and some states in America are escrow states when it comes to real estate. Like, for example, Arizona is a escrow state. New York is a attorney state. Illinois, an attorney state.
I believe Nebraska's escrow as well.
Yeah. So, but they have escrow as well. Absolutely. But there's an attorney involved to, review the contract and maybe, do some other little things that I can't speak to because we don't operate that way in Arizona. I'm not an expert on those things. But I do know that in that situation, typically you have the real estate attorney, you have the buyer, seller, the escrow person, the agents all at one table, you're signing documents, all staring at each other. It's a really awkward moment, at least prior to COVID it was, right? And then you have all that going on. Meanwhile, in Arizona, the buyer signs when it's convenient for them with the title company. That's it. And a notary, of course. And the seller does it when it's convenient to them on a different day, different time, could be a whole different place. And then yet it still gets done the same way. And there's no attorneys involved. So if you're in an escrow state, you definitely are not to be giving, as a real estate licensee, you definitely are not to be giving legal advice that is referred and designated for an attorney. No question about it, even in an escrow state. However, in an escrow state, as an agent, you do have the duty to understand and be able to interpret on at least a surface level, things to advise your client on when it comes to the contract and the process and how it works, and so on and so forth. And maybe for some super technical things, you have to get an attorney's opinion, but you have to have that knowledge. And so I was told a long time ago when I went through schooling that in escrow states, there is a little more onus put on the agent. There just is, Now, in terms of you being in trouble if you don't do this or do that, maybe not, that might be hard to do, right? But in terms of just being a good advisor, a good agent for that buyer or seller, there's a little more onus put on you, because you can't just say, okay, I showed you the house, I have this contract we can use, and let's figure out what you want to buy it at and offer and all this, negotiate, and then say everything else, talk to the attorney. Right. And I'm not trying to dumb that down for anyone else who's in an attorney state, because there could be more to it you have to do. I'm not here to, my point is that there are different methods in different states. And so if you're in that escrow state, you do need to step up your game to make sure you understand the contract. I can tell you now, Elizabeth, there's multiple things in the contract. Sometimes when I'm negotiating an offer with another agent in Arizona, that sometimes I bring up, section blah, 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 whatever, and they just don't know what it is. Not that they have to have sections memorized, but topics you should, right?
Yes.
So I go, it's a topic about, whatever, right? The unfulfilled loan contingency. Oh, they didn't know the intricacies of it, which is arguably a problem,
Yeah. Well, I feel like at the very least, when you are giving your client a contract to sign, you should be able to say, like, pay attention to this part. You probably want to read this part over, without getting to, can't practice legal advice, but give them a good overview and explain kind of what's happening within that contract, right?
Yeah. And then if there's anything that you don't feel comfortable with, you always say, hey, I recommend speaking to an attorney on that, right? You're not supposed to be an attorney like we talked about. So the point is just know your stuff as best as you can, know the contract, the stuff you're doing every day. And after doing it 18 years, listen, I get it. You're going to pretty much see everything. So you're kind of going to know anyways, but even like 3-4 years into the business, it's easy to be in the mode of, okay, I got to serve clients. I have to do all these other things. Make sure I have a client appreciation event, make sure I, am calling back, these leads that want to be talked to, whatever it may be. There's always, but, so it's easy to also just kind of put aside the contractual stuff, the things that really matter when it comes to, you have a client, they have a house. Now, how do you best serve them and protect them?
At the end of the day, right? That is the need that you are really fulfilling, right? Like that is the whole reason for getting clients, for everything around the business kind of comes down to that contractual agreement between a buyer and a seller, right? So you should probably, be familiar with it.
Yeah. And then at the very end, people are going to transact business with you. I've said it before on this podcast. I'll say it again, because of how you made them feel at the end of the transaction. So then
they feel
of course,
safe
at the very
and
end,
good and trusted.
Yeah. We did a great job. Just make sure you obviously, part ways at the end in a very nice way. Make sure you give them the keys. It may be a little closing gift either there or sometime shortly thereafter, and make sure they're all checked in. And then of course, check in on them after in a systematic process, right? Every week, every 3 days for the first month, whatever it may be, right? Just check in a little text. How you doing? How's the house? Just so you know that you were more to them than just the transaction, right? That they were more to you. There it is, than just a transaction.
Yes.
That's the key, that you want to build a relationship with them and be a resource for them for anything they need moving forward forever and ever and ever. Amen.
And their friends and their family. Yep. Absolutely.
So there you go.
Well, fantastic, guys. So bottom line here, we've talked about this concept before, just how to best serve your clients, different ways to serve your clients, being the kind of that center of education and all of that. So this is just another way to say it, another layer on top of that. Know your contracts, kind of be able to really put their needs ahead of your own. And I think it's important for its own message, its own episode here. So hope you guys enjoyed that one. And Kelly, if they have any questions about anything that we talked about here today, or anything we've talked about previously, last week we covered property management, we've covered investing, we've covered recruiting, a whole bunch of stuff. Kelly, where can they reach you?
As always, check us out on Instagram at Kelly Cook Homes. DM me there, or just text me, call me 480-227-2028, and I will get back to you.
Yeah, let us know what you want us to talk about. Also, if you are thinking of building your own real estate team, please go to buildyourrealestateteam.com, download the kind of modules there that Kelly has laid out for you so that you can do it the right way the first time, right? So
Exactly.
Fantastic, guys. We will see you next week. And Kelly, we'll see you next week. Have a good
All
day.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Welcome to the podcast Selling Real Estate with Kelly Cook, where we will discuss the latest and most relevant business strategies to help you do one thing extremely well: sell more homes. We'll discuss everything from business planning to lead generation and conversion to past client customer service and everything in between. Join us for authentic conversations and nuts and bolts takeaways you can implement into your business today. And now, Selling Real Estate with Kelly Cook.